Clearly, this meeting a shot at President Trump, who, by the way, the number of drone attacks since that summit in Anchorage between President Trump and President Putin have doubled. He's only stepped up the war, Putin, since that summit.
Clearly, Putin thumbing his nose at the United States of America.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the Midas Touch Network. I cannot tell you how painful it is watching America's reputation around the world, its credibility being squandered by a commander-in-chief whose entire approach to governing revolves around his own personal feelings. America's standing as a reliable ally is gone. When autocrats get together, they laugh at what America under Donald Trump has become. And that has devastating consequences for people around the world who once looked to America as an example, an imperfect one to be sure, but an example nonetheless of the value of liberal democracy. And for the MAGA trolls watching, before you pounce on my use of the word liberal in describing democracy, try Googling it first. As promised, I am sharing part 2 of my conversation with Julie Roginsky, a former Fox News host turned Democratic political strategist and author of the Salty Politics Substack. Last time, we talked about the rebranding of the Department of Defense into the Department of War and how Trump's increasing desperation at home is leading us closer to an actual war. In part 2, Julie and I talk about what it means for America's standing in the world to be so diminished. Julie also gets deeply personal about her experience as a refugee, fleeing Soviet Russia when she was just a child, and what it feels like to see her country now, our country, sending refugees and asylum seekers back to places like Putin's Russia. This is a tough one to get through, but I hope you will. Here's me and Julie Roginsky. I think most people don't realize how much of our geopolitics, American geopolitics, is driven by the personal whims of Donald Trump, whether his feelings are hurt on a certain day or whether he's been flattered on another day. I think part of his animus towards Modi was because he was laughed at for claiming that he brokered a deal over the Pakistan-India conflict a few months ago. I mean, it is crazy that our national security now depends on how Donald Trump is feeling when he gets up in the morning.
You see what he's doing with putting secondary tariffs on India and trashing India. Well, India now is buying more Russian oil year over year than it was under the Biden administration. Who benefits from that? Vladimir Putin. And then, of course, China benefits from all of it because the United States is now loathed in Asia where China wants to dominate. A country, a continent where we have spent decades trying to put our fingerprint and our footprint on. And so, if you think about this, why? I mean, why is he doing all of this to the benefit of all of these dictators and against the interests of the United States? I mean, I actually don't know the answer. I'm not being a conspiracy theorist. I'm not implying anything. But if I were to design the perfect robot to help the people who were in China last week at this, as I keep saying, Dictator Palooza, the person that I would design is Donald Trump.
We had a former covert CIA operative on last week who observed that the thing that most upset Trump about that conference in China was that he wasn't there.
Of course.
And that what drives him is actually envy. He wishes he had the type of control over his people that Kim Jong-un and Xi and Putin do. And far from being in competition with those autocrats, he is envious of them. He is aspiring to be like them.
Well, when he said in his Truth Social post or whatever, I'm not sure, truth or whatever the verb is for what he does with those things, when he said that they were trying to get Donald Trump's my attention and they got it. They got my attention. That was my immediate thought. Yeah, the attention that they got. And again, going back to my earlier discussion, he is somebody for whom war has so many benefits, from ending it and getting the Nobel Peace Prize in his mind to having a war economy that will juice up production and manufacturing because he can't get it done himself, from putting much more draconian measures on the American people under the guise of the Insurrection Act or some sort of War Powers Act that he wants. All of it serves his purposes, not the least of which is everybody rallies around the flag and everybody supports their president during a war. Initially, that's what happens. It happened in Afghanistan. It happened even in Iraq in the beginning. And ultimately, he understands that because, again, he's a master marketer. He will market whatever conflict it is. And the only question to me that none of us can answer is, where are we going to war? I don't think it's Venezuela. I don't think that's big enough for him. But where is it? Is it Iran? Is it somewhere in Asia? I don't know the answer to that. I doubt it. I doubt that it's going to be with China because that's a war he will not be able to win. And that's a war with somebody who I think he does a tremendous amount of business with. But it will be with somebody who's not putting money into his crypto fund right now and not otherwise sucking up to him to get the benefits of, his noblesse oblige. I don't know how else to describe what he's doing.
Hey, it's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break to say thank you to everyone who's been following and supporting this show and this channel. None of it happens without you. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my Substack page, I'd really appreciate the follow. It's a great way to make sure you never miss an episode. It's free to sign up. And if you're able to pitch in a few bucks, every dollar goes back into the show. Just search for The Ken Harbaugh Show on Substack or click the link below. Thanks. Last question. I want to pivot to ICE because there is a nexus with this. You posted, and this is a story I hadn't been made aware of until you began writing about it, about Russian dissidents and asylum seekers being sent back to Moscow, one of whom apparently was a deserter from the Russian military. What do you think is going to happen to that guy? I say that rhetorically, but
I think we all know what's going to happen to that guy. That guy's going to get...
And we did that.
Let me tell you something. I have something coming out about that, I think, tomorrow. This is so deeply personal to me. So I don't know if people know this. I was actually one of those Russian refugees. I was born in the Soviet Union, and my family was a refugee, and we had asylum, and that's how we ended up living here for the last 45 years. I was very little. I was 6 years old when we left. I was 7 when we got here. It was an incredibly arduous journey. We crossed the border in New York as refugees. Most of these people cross the border in Mexico as refugees and ask for asylum, as they are allowed to do under international law. Now, the one thing that I knew as a child, and a lot of these people are parents with children who are now sitting in ICE detention waiting to be deported, some of whom have already been deported. The one thing I knew as a child is when we got here, and I didn't know what here was going to be, but I was told consistently, when we got to the United States, we would be safe. And that was never a doubt. And that was really the only thing that I, as a little girl, could cling to. And my parents, as 35-year-olds at the time, could cling to. I cannot imagine what it would have felt like to get here, to be separated from my parents, to have them placed in ICE detention while I was placed in foster care. And then eventually, if I ever saw my parents again, and I probably would have, not speaking a word of English, by the way, not understanding what is going on, not having any familiarity or anybody else around you, to then be put back on a plane to the country that you know is going to wish you ill, knowing that once you got there, your parents would be sent to the gulag for probably a decade, if not more. And by the time you became an adult, maybe they'd be released, maybe not. And you'd either be in an orphanage or raised by relatives. I mean, that's what we're doing from a human perspective. Because we, the country of the Statue of Liberty that talks about give us your tired, your poor, the country that has accepted that Vladimir Putin is the most dangerous man on earth, we are now sending these people back. I don't know what's going to happen to that deserter. Maybe he'll be shot as a deserter. Best case scenario for him, he'll be in the gulag for the next 10 years, if not longer.
I'm almost without words. I know it's my job to talk, but it fills me with a similar amount of rage. And I want Democrats to begin running on an accountability agenda, because I have to believe some of this stuff is illegal, that due process is being violated every single day, if not in these cases, in others. And if not for just maintaining the value of law and order, then for the deterrent effect itself, we need to be signaling that we're watching, we're documenting, and there will be accountability for agents of the federal government who violated people's rights thinking they were going to get away with it because Trump would always be in power.
Let me be very clear. I will not vote for any Democratic nominee for president. This is literally my litmus test. I have never had a litmus test before in my life. This is my litmus test. Donald Trump will not be prosecuted because Donald Trump will either be dead for whatever disease they're obviously hiding that he has, or he's got immunity thanks to the Roberts Court. But J.D. Vance on down, Tom Homan, Kristi Noem, Marco Rubio, and all of the henchmen who are doing their will on this particular Russian issue and all of these other immigration issues, all of them, all the masked ICE agents whose names we don't know right now but exist in some database, they need to be prosecuted. And again, this is not retribution. This is not retaliation. This is because this country needs to stand for the proposition that we are a nation of laws, and you don't get to subvert them, and you don't get to engage in sending people to their deaths, which is probably what's going to happen to this deserter. It's so troubling. And what just drives me insane is when I open up the New York Times and I open up the mainstream media, and, you know, if they touch on it at all, it'll be like, oh, yeah, this happened. Let's move on to talk about the US Open.
Yeah.
I mean, this is how democracy dies. It does die in darkness, and it dies in darkness. And it dies in darkness because the darkness has descended upon our nation like a fucking, excuse my language, biblical plague, and the media will not cover it.
Yeah, I was just at a conference with some of the bigwigs in the media, and just the conceit that they carry. I mean, the New York Times' tagline is all the news that's fit to print. The Washington Post is democracy dies in darkness.
Not
just
anymore. They got rid of that. Yeah. I mean, all the news that's fit to print. Why is it that Olga Lautman and I are writing a 3,000 word a week series on Russian election interference in 2016? And this was not in the cards. This was not a plan that she and I planned to do. This is not like we woke up and said, oh, let's revisit 2016. It is because Donald Trump once again called it a hoax.
Yep.
And the way the media covers it is, well, you know, we talked about this before, but Trump says it's a hoax. So one person says the earth is round and one person says the earth is flat. So we'll give them
it's
both.
An oval.
Yeah. Like, no, they should be doing this.
Right.
They should be taking the time to do this, not because this is history, not because this is something that we need to read about in school one day, which of course we will, hopefully, but because the narrative is being rewritten even as Russia continues to do this. They interfered in 16, they interfered in 20, they interfered in 24, they're going to interfere again in 26 and in 28. All of those tweets, all of that social media post, all of that stuff, assume that 50% of it are Russian bots. It's just, you know, remember the Bernie bros? It turned out those were Russian bots for the most part. But the one person they never went after was Donald Trump. Because what Trump is doing right now is, as I said, if I were sitting in Moscow in some KGB, you know, Lubyanka in the KGB headquarters in 1940, whatever year Trump was conceived, and I said, I want to conceive of a man who will grow up to give us everything we want, I could not do better than Donald Trump. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not implying anything. I'm simply saying that whether purposely, but it's either a sin of omission or a sin of commission if you're Catholic. I'm not, but you'll understand what I'm talking about. But whatever it is, that is what is happening right now.
Yep. We're going to have to leave it there, Julie. Thanks so much for coming on. Let's check in again soon.
Anytime.